Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Getting In, a college coach conversation. It is already kind of a chilly fall day here in New England because apparently when we have Labor Day, someone flips a switch here and suddenly it's fall. And I don't really know how I feel about that, but I also know it's fall because my senior students and all of my colleagues' seniors are suddenly clamoring for our attention. And if you are a senior who has not really started thinking much about this process, now is the time. It is officially time. We've been telling you this for a while, but it is official. And you know how else I know it's official? Because I have Halloween candy in my house. I don't know if we're going to have trick-or-treaters this year. I have no idea what's going to happen, but we have candy. All right. Most of the show today is geared towards answering your questions, but before we get to your questions, I am excited to welcome my colleague, Lauren D Prospero. She is a former senior director of admissions at Stanford Medicine and also a former director of admissions at Columbia School of Medicine. Welcome, Lauren.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So you may have guessed from my intro, today we're talking to Lauren about pre-med students. She's here to offer you guys some advice. And so we have a lot of students who are thinking about maybe doing medical school. Maybe they are still in high school. A lot of our listeners are still in high school. Some are just about to head off to college or have recently headed off to college. But when we were talking about what would be a great idea for this segment, you brought up pre-med advising. And so I guess for students who are considering that pre-med path, what is your first piece of advice to those students?
Yeah, well, my first piece of advice is to meet with a pre-med advisor on your campus. So every college has advisors that are dedicated to helping students interested in pre-professional paths. So that could be medicine, it could be dentistry, it could be law, it could be pharmacy, among other things, right? And these advisors are found in many different types of campuses, of offices on campus, like academic dean's offices. They could be professors, it could be housed in career counseling. And at many colleges, there's actually a whole office dedicated to these pathways. Sometimes it's called pre-professional advising, sometimes it's called pre-health advising. And if you're having a hard time figuring out where this is located on your campus, who that person or who that office might be, you can ask your academic advisor, your student service officer, your RA, an upperclassman, maybe another freshman. They should be able to point you in the right direction. And so, go ahead.
Well, one quick thing that I would add is for those of you who are investigating colleges, this is something you want to ask about potentially before you even apply, but certainly before you enroll. You want to learn more about how are you going to find that person, how you're going to get connected to them, because based on what I'm hearing from you, Lauren, this is going to be a really important person in your life if your ultimate goal is medical school.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can typically find all of this information on a forward-facing website. So if you are a senior or a junior in high school, even if you're a freshman, you can typically find this information and see how is this set up at the college. One way is not better than the other. Just because they have a health advising office doesn't mean that that's the right fit for you or mean that it's a great program, but just familiarize yourself with what they have available and what that structure looks like.
Right. And I think that's a good point. It's not necessarily going to look the same everywhere. And just because it's got a fancy title doesn't mean they're going to be more effective at helping you through this than somebody else, right? So asking questions. Okay. What else? Is there a timeline of good times to get in touch with your pre-med advisor, that person on the campus?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you are a freshman, do this as early as possible, because they can help you decide if this is a path that you want to go down, right? It can help you decide what coursework to take, tell you about opportunities in the area and how they support students like you. So it's not just about curriculum planning, but what happens when you decide to actually apply to college. And so you want to check in a few times over the years, get on those listservs, make sure you're getting that information. And as you're approaching that junior year, making sure you're connecting more, especially if you're thinking about going to medical school right after college, to find out what their processes are and what offerings they have to help support current applicants. And if you're a junior who's just discovered that you love medicine and that's the direction you want to go, they can help you figure out Maybe it's that you have to do a post-bac program, or that you have to really double down on certain classes in your last 2 years. They can help you figure out your path wherever you are starting from.
Got it. And so I do think a lot of pre-med students, we mentioned it in the past, but also because I just think it's where their brain is at. They're thinking, I'm going to get a job with a doctor, and that's what my first focus is going to be on, or I'm going to get a job in a lab doing research. And what I'm hearing is that actually more important than that is the pre-med advising, making and maintaining that contact. So why that instead of the doctor, the lab, that kind of thing?
Yeah, there are a lot of steps to applying to medical school. And so certainly all of those things you mentioned are things that you should be doing. Maybe you can do them at the same time. But the pre-health advisor can help you come up with a thoughtful plan of how to move through this process in an authentic way, according to your interests, and providing you suggestions to get the experience that you need, right? And then to even just start the inklings of, is this the right career for you?
Yes.
Right? I know a student who met with her academic advisor early on, right, as a freshman, said, I want to be pre-med, because that's what she thought you had to do as a college freshman. Like everybody's pre-med, right?
Yep.
And so instead of reflecting on why, the academic advisor heard that and said, okay, sign up for all of these prerequisite coursework for medical school. She very quickly realized she didn't want to be pre-med, but was stuck with these classes and kind of felt like she had a wasted, semester doing these classes, and not having really reflected on, hey, maybe I really don't want to be pre-med, or I want to explore something more. And so obviously that curriculum is huge, because if you do know it, and you need to get on top of these things to actually get them done by the time you graduate. But there are also quirks in individual departments that these advisors could know about to help you get through that, right? If you're a biology major and the chemistry department requires you take 4 classes to do orgo, you need to be planning for that. These advisors, both academic but also pre-med, know this and can help you navigate that, right? And especially as a freshman, you're not going to know what opportunities are available to you off campus. You're not going to know how to connect with professors for research. They can help you with that, and help you with the timing, right? Does it make sense to take a gap year or 2 in between, which is very common these days? And so those conversations, those drop-in hours, workshops, appointments, all of that is really important in helping you determine, is this the right thing? And I think it all starts with a really good conversation with a pre-med advisor.
Yeah, I almost wish that some high school students could have that conversation with the pre-med advisor before they arrived, because I will share that in the years that I've been doing this work, which we're going back to 2002 already, both when I was in admissions and certainly since I have come out and started doing this work, I meet so many bright students who are set on the medicine path. And yet many of them don't end up actually taking that path. And I think the reason is, if you're reasonably good in the sciences and you're very bright, the tendency is to look around and say, well, what could I do? Everybody respects doctors, and I really love science. And so I could be a doctor, and wouldn't that be great? I'd be helping people and I'd be making money, because that's also, it's also all laid out for you. It's a clear path. Like, first you do this, then you do this, then you become a doctor, and your life is set. And we all know that life doesn't really work that way. And while certainly there are plenty of students who hold fast to that dream and achieve it, I do see lots of students changing their mind. And so, not that you can necessarily have that detailed conversation with the pre-med advisor before you get there, but I love that advice to at least have it when you're starting college, because this is the start of where you really start to figure things out for yourself. And you may already think differently at 18 and a half than you did at 17 and a half or 18 or, 2 months ago when you graduated from high school. So
and there are so many jobs in the healthcare field. And, in high school, you have such a prescribed curriculum. You feel like there are so many choices, but it's pretty prescribed. Like you do X, Y, and Z. And when you get to college, there are so many different classes and different takes on the same subject that you might find something completely fascinating and go a completely different direction. You just can't anticipate that in high school necessarily, but hopefully in listening to us, that that's a possibility as well. So to keep your options open.
Yeah, I mean, when my mom was in the hospital a few years ago, I just remember as we were going to the hospital every single day for 2.5 months thinking, this is the worst life. I have no idea why anyone, thank God people want to do it, but I have no idea why they would want to do it. And sometimes I think people look at it as a profession without looking at everything that surrounds it. And certainly in the world we currently live in, you are on the front line if you are in those professions. And it is wonderful that there are people who want to do it, but you do have to ask yourself, is this really what I want? Or is this just because I've checked 3 boxes and now everybody thinks this is what I should do and I think it's what I should do, but it isn't actually what I should do.
Right, exactly.
What about if you've graduated, you weren't on a pre-med track, you didn't meet with your pre-med advisor, now you're a couple of years out of school, you've done other things, and suddenly you're saying to yourself, wow, I missed the boat. I actually really want to be a doctor. What can you do then once you're long out of college or a couple of years out?
Or maybe you did it all on your own and you didn't meet with them. Right? Maybe you do have everything prepared. I still encourage you to reach out because they might be able to support students who have graduated from your college, right? They might have that alumni support there. So it never hurts to ask. And maybe they have other resources to send you to if they can't fully support you. If you are that student who discovers later, they can help you understand what are post-bac programs? What does this all look like if you want to be doing this alongside another career? Or what if you want to step out to be doing programs that will prepare you? Because no matter when it is that you decide that you want to become a doctor, it's a longer path than I want to become a doctor, I'm going to apply to medical school. There are a lot of things in between.
Right. It's not quite the same as just going from high school to college.
Exactly.
Any other last thoughts here for those students who are entering college and on that pre-med path?
Yeah. So the other thing I would say is, to do a little bit of soul searching before you get to that appointment with the pre-med advisor, even before you end up shadowing or however you choose to try and decide if this is the right field, right? You don't have to have that well-developed answer of why medicine, but some thought as to why you're interested can help an advisor, help a mentor direct you through this path. And so I think having some questions to ask them is also important, right? About what's available on or off campus, what is required for medical school, what are some of the changes that have happened this year, or that you perceive happening as a result of COVID and the impact. It's not just undergraduate admissions that have been impacted, all admissions have been impacted, and it's been interesting to see what's happened in the medical school. But even, am I competitive for medical school, right?
Yes.
Once you get a few years under your belt, you have a few science classes, you've been doing a few things. Am I competitive? If I'm not, what should I do to become competitive? If there's nothing that's going to make me competitive, what are some alternatives I can think about that will fulfill this desire to be in medicine and to be helping? So all of those questions are both good for you to think about and reflect on, but also to be talking to your pre-med advisor about, because that soul searching is just so important in this process to write that great application, to be prepared for that career, and then to be supported by whoever it is who is helping you through this process.
Right. And it's so much education. The more soul searching you do before you invest all that time and money, only to come out the other side and say, wow, I really don't want to be a doctor. That's not good. You want to do the soul searching early. I sound like I'm anti-medicine or anti-doctor, and I'm 100% not. What I am is aware that so many people set their sights on this and then ultimately discover it's not really what they want. And so I like you would encourage that soul searching just to make sure. You just want to be as sure as you can be. So
it's checking in with yourself. And I think it's good no matter what you're doing. It just so happens that medicine is such a big commitment. It takes so many years that it's that much more important to be doing that earlier on.
Exactly. Lauren, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We're going to take a quick break, and then when we come back, we are going to be answering your questions. So don't go away.